What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co host, Alex Wilson. And today, breaking down the New York Giants win, we have a very special guest joining us, two-time Super Bowl champion, first team All Pro, Giants Ring of Honor inductee, Carl Banks. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing great.
Awesome. I'm really excited to have you on and break down a New York Giants win. It's a victory Monday. Every Monday is so much better after a New York Giants win. Of course, a little bit of a damper on it with Malik Neighbors. We got the news
Yeah.
officially confirmed about an hour ago that he did suffer a torn ACL, but trying not to focus too much on the negative because finally we have a positive outing from the Giants to focus in on. So, Carl, I just want to get your main takeaways from yesterday's game. Giants beat the Chargers, upset at home, and Jackson Dart making his debut. What was your biggest takeaway?
It wasn't perfect, but I thought as a team, collectively, I thought they played complementary football where they needed to. Um, Special teams were very important and they showed up. Offensive line did a great job. Defense was a problem all game. There's some things that they do have to clean up, but you got the sense from the opening drive that the game wasn't too big for Jackson Dart. I thought they called an excellent game for him in just terms of getting him in the flow. But, you can see some things from him that will get better, probably from week to week. He missed some throws. He took some sacks that probably, if he would have allowed the play to happen, instead of trying to force in his mind what should have been, he probably has some more successful plays. But all in all, I thought, they collectively did a great job. I'm a stickler for missed tackles and things like that. But I think those things can be cleaned up. And um, what I look for in a team, a defense, when you say a team can't tackle, there's a difference in a team that's a poor tackling team and a team that can't tackle, right? The Giants are a poor tackling team. Those things are fixable. A team that can't tackle is a group of guys who are unwilling to go in and tackle. Giants players are missing tackles, but it ain't because they're turning them down. They're using poor technique and bad angles, right? Those are things that are easily fixable. Right before the half, poor angle by Dane Belton turns what would be possibly an interception or at least at the minimum a pass breakup into a touchdown. Um, we look at that play and everybody says, oh my God, Deontay Banks bit on a double move. Well, the defense allowed him to do that because he was supposed to have help over the top. And that literally it would have negated what the offense thought they had with the double move. If Dane Belton's alignment was a little wider, just at pre-snap, he's there. It's an easy pick. But, these are coachable things. The good news is they don't get to coach it. They don't have to coach it under duress, right? They're coaching and cleaning things up after a victory.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you talked about the tackling. I think that's a good way to put it. The perspective of it's not that they're unwilling, it's that they just don't have the right technique sometimes. The one that really stood out to me was Paulson Adebo when he got carried by Omarion Hampton 20 yards downfield. You know, in your
Yeah.
perspective, what is the right technique? Like, what would you do differently if you were teaching Adebo? Would you go for the legs?
So,
Try to take him down by his shoes?
well, he's right there at the line of scrimmage. I don't know what much more he could have done other than going low and wrapping his ankles. But it was a short yardage stop, right? So if I'm playing this film, I'm going to count the bodies that didn't get to the ball to help him, right? That's, for me, defense is a team effort. He got carried 18 yards. 10 of those people could have helped. right? People were diving and block tackling and all of those things. That's not how you, again, they're a poor tackling team, right? Adebo never let go of the guy, right? He didn't get knocked off of the guy, but he didn't get the help that he was supposed to have. And so that's a team failure more so than Adebo getting run over or carried. I mean, it's going to be on the highlight film for the Chargers for years to come. But I think, that's a defensive failure. I would never allow Mark Collins to get carried by anybody, right? If he can stick it up in there at the line of scrimmage, you better believe we're going to have about 8 or 9 other guys rallying to the football to get the guy on the ground, because he did his part, right? He was, the contained guy or the point of attack guy. Now you just got to rally the troops. It was short yardage. Short yardage is not a one-man effort. It's an every-man effort.
Yeah, and jumping on that, it's an everyman effort. You mentioned defense is a team effort, but there was one unit that played together yesterday, and they looked excellent. If we want to ask anybody about a great pass rush, we want to ask you about a great pass rush. You've been around one. You were part of a great Giants defense in the 80s. But that defensive line yesterday came to play. Brian Burns leads the league in sacks right now with 5 total on the season. He's looked spectacular. Kayvon Thibodeau really coming into his own and silencing a lot of the critics. Abdul Carter had, I think, 8 or 9 pressures yesterday, 5 quarterback hits. He's starting to pick it up after a couple of weeks. And honestly, he's been productive through every week, still looking for that first sack. And Dexter Lawrence with an interception. I want to hear your take on it, how this defensive line has looked through the first few weeks after maybe not all around production, but now it's really starting to gel together, look cohesive, and they're starting to disrupt these quarterbacks.
So they're a problem. I mean, simply put, if you're an offensive coordinator and you've got to kind of figure out how you want to protect your passer, the number one thing you're saying to your offense, we cannot have negative plays, because the minute we have negative plays, this is where these guys will really get after us. And you don't have enough offensive linemen to double, right? When you've got 4 competent pass rushers, you got to pick which guy you want to leave one-on-one with one of your players. And so chances are your best player is not going to be left one-on-one with the Giants' best player. So that means the other 3 good players are going to be matched up with guys that are likely inferior. So this is the disruption that a lot of people talked about in the offseason. And they have, for the most part, earned the right to rush the passer. And that was my biggest caution, is that if they don't earn the right to rush the passer, we'll never see how good they are. And, they're a combination of, if Shane Bowen wants to introduce, pass rush games or stunts, they do that because they're very athletic. But one-on-one or even 1-on-2, they hold their own. Exhibit A is Dexter Lawrence. He's being double teamed. He jumps up and grabs an interception, right? That wasn't any type of scheme enablement. It was just him, doing what he does. So I think that is the danger of, having to play against the Giants front. And, if you can get to the Giants back end, people think you can exploit them, but there's the element of having to try to get to them, right? And they're no bums. They've got some issues that are easily fixable. And I think if we look at week 1 to week 4, the things that you saw that were so glaring in week 1 are not reappearing. So they are cleaning up as they go, and that's a very good sign. And I think right now, for me, I would love for the back end of the defense to just be boring and we don't talk about them, right? I want to see a guy like Dane Belton, who is a very physical kid. He's a gamer, but I need you to be very assignment conscious. If you're assignment conscious, you're going to make so many more plays for your defense. A guy like Tyler Nubin, who is, I like him a lot, be assignment conscious. take note of where you are and the angles that you take and the leverage that you're supposed to have pre-snap. You're going to make so many more plays for your defense. Your defensive front makes it easy to play defensive back. You don't have to do anything but your job. And, case in point, Keenan Allen had 4 catches for under 50 yards, right? That was the biggest concern of many coming into the game is how do you can't let Keenan Allen wreck the game for you. They didn't. So they're doing some things right. And obviously the mistakes rear themselves and it triggers everybody into, well, I told you this guy is not good or he's overrated. No, I think they're improving each week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you kind of said it there. The mistakes the defense was making weeks 1 through 3, you didn't see them replicate in week 4 against the Chargers. They got better. And I think, as the kids are saying, Shane Bowen was kind of in his bag yesterday. He had some pretty good, he said pretty good calls yesterday. And that was honestly great to see because I think that similar with players, coaches also improve week to week, identifying weak points and then alleviating those. But, Abdul Carter was more of a pass rusher yesterday. He didn't really play off-ball linebacker much, and they had him running stunts and all sorts of things, maximizing his skill set. Watching him and what he did, and I think that the cool thing about having Kayvon, Carter, Burns, their legs are fresh when the fourth quarter comes around because they're able to spell each other. So how important do you think it is that Carter kind of remains now moving forward as a primary pass rusher and not really playing that off-ball linebacker? Obviously, Muasau coming back was a big addition for that defense.
Yeah, I think the fact that he's shown the ability to play off-ball linebacker gives Shane Bowen a lot of scheme flexibility. Obviously, everyone loves seeing him on the line of scrimmage. One thing that went unnoticed a few times is that Brian Burns played in space. He dropped off in pass coverage. So he lines up on the line of scrimmage, and then next thing you know, he's in pass. He made a few big open field tackles as he wasn't an off-ball linebacker, but he was a space linebacker. And so I think the scheme flexibility of once you line them up and not knowing who's going to do what, it really can cause a problem for an offense. But listen, his best skill set right now, or his most valuable skill set, is his ability to come off the edge. He's just an incredible player coming off the edge.
For sure. Talking a lot about that first round rookie, number 3 overall, Abdul Carter. We got to talk about the number 25 overall pick in the draft, Jackson Dart. I got to hear your perspective on how Dart did in his first game. Obviously, you mentioned earlier, it wasn't perfect. There's definitely some things to clean up, but he flashed a lot. And the number one word that I've always liked to use for Jackson Dart is poise. And I think the poise was evident yesterday. He plays with poise every time he's on the field, but he also plays with some moxie. So I want to hear your general thoughts on his performance, but I also want to ask you specifically on Jackson Dart running into contact. A lot of fans on social media have been debating this and saying how he needs to get down, he needs to protect himself. And in some ways, I'm a little bit contrarian, and I'll kind of share my opinion on this. I think it's just part of who he is. It's part of his identity as a football player. And it's one of those Baker Mayfield type things. And a lot of people talk about Jackson Dart like he's a smaller quarterback. He's the same size as Patrick Mahomes. He's 6'2", 225. He's a big kid, and he runs like he's a big kid. And when he lays down that shoulder and he makes those hits and he fights for that extra yardage, I actually feel like it does a lot for the team, keeping everybody hyped up and believing in their quarterback. But I do want to get your take on it. Of course, it's a balance. Want to see him protect himself, but I also think you don't want to nerf the kid either. You want to let him be himself on that football field.
Well, I think just overall, I thought he, to your point, showed great poise, right? I thought he made great decisions. Even if he came to the sideline after a sack and said to the coach, I wasn't sure what I was looking at, that's a great decision just to take the sack, right? There were a couple times they had a bunch formation and they had a sail route, and he was probably looking inside and just didn't see it, but he had Neighbors and Hyatt on a sail route that had the cornerback in conflict. And I'm sure by the time he got to it, he just went down, took the sack. That's not a bad decision, right? There were a few cases like that. I think he was sacked 5 times, and instead of putting the ball in harm's way, he did a good job. And to be able to be a player at that position who can also energize your team with those types of runs you're talking about, right? Um, I think it's a plus. The one thing that, because I think the other parts of it, the contact, running into contact thing, that'll take care of itself. He'll decide, right? He'll decide when it's the right time and who is the right person to take on. The one complaint I have was on his big long run. He tries to stiff arm or slap, the defender. I'm like, bro, that's the hand they're paying you for. You can't damage that hand trying to hit somebody or shrug them off. Other than that, I would say just keep doing what you're doing. But, as he looks at himself on film, he will realize that there are certain times you're going to have to make a decision to get down, get what you can and get down, because once you break the line of scrimmage, it's probably wise to keep looking, because the big guys are the ones that normally hurt you. It's not the little ones. You look at most of these quarterbacks that suffer these injuries, it's always a big guy chasing them down. And, I always remember the situation with RG3. He, blew his knee out, big old guy run him down. Even the kid now in Washington, Jaden Daniels, his injury came via a defensive lineman who caught him while he was scrambling. So you just got to be smart. But it's, you're in an injury game, right? It's just the nature. It's a byproduct of what you do. I think he's going to be okay. Just don't punch anybody with your throwing hand. And also understanding there's a big old back, number 44 back there, that'll do all of that for you. He's a guy that'll slam into people and soften up a defense for you. So I think he did a good job, though. But they have to help him out. There were some times, I call it user error, where the play, could be the right play and the execution could be wrong. He scrambled a little bit on the 4th down play. Lobs one up to Rondell Robinson. It's in his hands. It's in his hands for a touchdown.
Got to catch it.
Got to make it. You got to catch it. You got to help you guys out. That's the whole Patrick Mahomes to his guys type thing, right? If it hit you in both hands, it wasn't a contested play until it got into your hands.
Mm-hmm.
You want to see that type of magic, make those types of catches for your quarterback, and you'll start to see the scoreboard light up more.
Absolutely. I mean, they got some kids over there, and like you said, Scadaboo as well, that can set the tone. And I think the team rallies around that. And look, the Giants, obviously, the last few years have been a losing football team. And I think you have to learn how to win. And I think that's a perspective that, definitely goes under the table a bit. You have to learn how to pull out those close games like they did yesterday, with their time management and making things work. And talking about just the discipline of this team, the coaching staff had a much better performance. It was much more of a full team performance yesterday, when it's been some phases, not all. Brian Daboll going out and making that decision. I'm going with my guy. I'm going with the guy that I think can help us win a football game. And of course, they go out and do that. How important do you think that is for his job security? Do you think that his job security is in flux right now? And obviously, this is a big moment for him. And I do think that he gave himself a bit more time to right the ship.
Well, I think, it's a results-oriented business, Alex. And every win is job security. It's like that for everybody, unless you are someone like Andy Reid or Mike Tomlin. Every coach, every win is job security. So if you say it was a desperate move to start Jackson Dart, well, what was his choices? People are like complaining, but we all saw that Russell was ineffective, right? And they needed something. That's what coaches coach for, their job. You know what I mean? So there's no scholarships there, especially when your record year over year is just not improving. And then you got one draft class under your belt, and this is your second draft class of your people. You really want to, it's do or die. It's show up. And so, but the nanification of the quarterback when they say, well, he wasn't ready and they put him in too soon. You're not ready until you take the field. You show the ability to play the game, and that's what qualifies you to get on the field. After that, you prepare, and then you see things like you saw yesterday. You saw what he's naturally really good at. And then you saw some things where he made decisions that were not risky. He protected his team. He protected the football. You don't have to nanify him. He's an NFL player. Don't be a nanny. He's out there because they needed him and the coach needed him. Yes, and that staff, they're fighting for their jobs. That's the nature of the game. So that's not a bad thing that he made a wise decision to get his guy in there. He's like, okay, I'm not going to fool around with this anymore. We brought Russ in for security, and we didn't even know that Jackson was going to be available during free agency, right? So yeah, he's our guy. I'm going with him, and I have no problem with that.
You are preaching to the choir, man. Everything you said there about Jackson Dart, him being ready, throwing him into the fire. I mean, you're just saying everything that I've been saying. So I'm really happy to hear that coming from a legend like yourself and getting your take on the New York Giants win over the Chargers. So appreciate your time. Before we do wrap up, looking ahead, Giants now going up against the New Orleans Saints on the road next week. What are you looking for in that one as Jackson Dart goes to make his second start in the NFL, but this time not going into that game with his number one wide receiver, Malik Neighbors, on the field?
Well, it has to be a team effort again. But here's the thing. The Giants played 3 of 4 games, and they were punching above their weight class. The 4th game, they punched and landed, and they knocked off a really legitimate contender, right? So they've raised the expectation for themselves, I hope, that, you don't have to stay in the same weight class. You just showed that when you play complementary football, you can rise above, and that should be your level now. I expect Jackson Dart to grow from this past weekend to next weekend. I expect this defense to continue to evolve. I took some criticism because, Sean O'Hara and I were saying, if you look at a team that was 0-3 at the time, there were plays that were left out there, and that team could easily be 2-1. And that wasn't, hyperbole. It was, guys who have been in a locker room and can look at you and say, well, the safety, like let's say, for instance, if they would have lost the game yesterday on Dane Belton being out of position, and that would have been the difference in the game, can you tell me that they played a game that they should have lost or they should have won? Right? That's the only thing we're saying. But when we see it from the eyes of those in the locker room, we're not seeing a team that doesn't have ability. We're seeing a team that, hey, do the little things, you can win these types of games. Same thing in the Kansas City game. Like, you can't tell me they didn't have their opportunities to win the game. So they took advantage of those. And with the Chargers, now they've got to make those types of things the norm. Clean up the things that you're sloppy at. Make sure you're where you're supposed to be. Be boring. You don't have to be fancy in the back end of your defense. Just be where you're supposed to be and let the defensive front feed you. They're going to make you look so much better than you actually are if you just do your job, because this defensive front is going to put a lot of duress on a passing game. And you just be exactly where you're supposed to be. You'll come up with these interceptions. And also, I'll give you one other thing too. When we talk about the growth of this defense from week 1 to where we are, and from Dallas to where we are now, they are putting their hands on wide receivers. They are not letting free runners in their defense. You'll see it. You cut the tape on. They are putting hands on guys, no free runners, and that disrupts timing. And that's something that they weren't doing earlier. So I want to continue to see those types of things happen as well.
Yeah, playing physical, playing effective as well. You mentioned opportunities. They took advantage of opportunities yesterday. They still do have a few opportunities that they're leaving on the table, but like you
Sure.
said, they just have some things to clean up. Red zone offense in particular does need to be better next week on the road against New Orleans. But Carl,
Mhm.
thank you so much for joining us today, man. It's so great
Thank
that
you
we
guys for
finally got
having
a
me.
Giants win here to react to and discuss, and really
Yeah,
just appreciate your time, man.
I appreciate you guys as well.
Absolutely. So, everybody, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed. Shout out to Carl. Make sure you show him some love down below in the comment section and subscribe to the channel if you are new. We will catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go, New York Football Giants.
Perfect.